Ready, set, go!
Age Investigated, the best true crime channel out there.
I'm a true crime channel.
12 Gauge Investigators is the best.
12 Gauge Investigators the best.
12 Gauge Investigator, he's the best.
Prince George's County 911 Center. What is the location of the emergency?
Across 4709 40th Avenue.
You say
It's a fire, and it's catching fast.
4709?
Yeah, 4709.
Okay, what city is that, ma'am?
Hyattsville, sorry.
And what's your name?
We take on the darkness, stare down deceit. Murder in the headlines, justice in the beat. From cold case whispers to killers in disguise, we rip off the mask, expose all the lies. Facts like bullets we load and deliver. Truth cuts deep like a blade in a river. Corruption shakes when the mic goes live. We dig where others won't survive. Keeps rolling through the smoke. Truth hits hard, no time for a joke. To see murder, we name every name. No restraint, no shame, just flesh.
12 Gauge Investigator is the best.
When you're in Foley, come get your hair cut where 12 gets his at Nick's Barbershop. 12 Gauge is the best. We love you.
12 Gauge Investigative is the best.
My name is 12 Gauge. Welcome.
Ready, set, go!
Age Investigated.
All right. I'm a little out of practice, can't you tell? I hope everybody can hear me. My name is 12 Gauge. Welcome to my channel. I hope everybody's doing well. I just got back off of an extended period of leave, I guess you would call it. Not really a leave, it was a vacation. And I thoroughly enjoyed myself, as you can tell. I bumped into some people that believe that my channel is the best, which is pretty awesome. Pretty awesome to say the least. Hello, Sirius. How you doing? I know it's early wherever you might be. So I thought that I would get on here and I'd share a little bit about the journey of true crime with you guys based on the experience that I went through in this crime museum. So I hope you enjoy it. This is the outside of the museum. Actually, the museum's called Alcatraz. Let me make this a little bigger so that y'all can see this. So that is the outside of the crime museum. As you can tell, it looks built like an old-timey prison, kind of like with the guard towers and everything. This was actually the back of the building because we had to park in the back. Let me go the other way because I'm going the wrong way. And I thought the guard towers looked pretty freaking cool, like how they built the building. And there's the original Alcatraz that they had on a photo as you walked in. And this was the first person that I bumped into as far as the person on the wall. Let me go ahead and Is that better? Can y'all see that better? Hey, Rondi, good morning. Awesome, Sirius. That would be awesome too. His name is Kenneth Jones. October 1st, 1915 to January 8th, 1980. So he lived a long time. He is not a safe risk to remain in general population here and should be transferred to a U.S. Penitentiary, Alcatraz Island, California. You've likely never heard of Kenneth Jones, but it's one of the only two inmates paroled from Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary. On his release from Alcatraz, the government furnished him with transportation to Knoxville, Tennessee. Kenneth Jones was in and out of prison from the first time he was 13 years old, including a stint in Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. By October 1938, he was out again and got married, but only a month later he was involved in yet another heist. So he was a bank robber, I think. And this is a medieval torture device. It says these are iron tongs. It's a both in public executions and torture sessions from tongs were used to tear strips of flesh from the accused. The serrated jaws aided in gripping, and the tongs were often heated red hot before use. So can you imagine these things like going into your skin, red hot, and tearing your flesh to pieces? That's amazing to me. I was in awe. I have to go back there. I mean, because that whole museum was just freaking awesome. Let me see. Okay, why won't it let me go? Here we go. And this is leg irons, Germany, 16th century. Heavy leg irons to confine prisoners for years after causing their ankles to be rubbed raw. Rust from the irons could infect the wounds and lead to life-threatening illness. So they would wear that contraption there and then put the leg irons on, which would rub their ankles raw. I think we stayed about almost 3 hours. And this is the iron muzzle. So the iron gags, such as one from Germany, were often used for heretics, a term particularly associated with those who spoke against the Roman Catholic Church. So they would muzzle you. They would put that in your mouth, put that around your head, and muzzle you. This is heretic fork. This implement is called heretic fork because of its use during the Inquisition and Protestant Reformation to punish those who spoke against the Roman Catholic Church. Forks were placed between the breastbone and under the chin, then tied around the neck with a leather strap. For hours and even days, the victim was prevented from laying down to sleep. Dozing off or letting the head fall forward would have a painful result. Jesus. Sometimes I wish things would have never changed. I thought these were pretty cool. I saw the Titanic Museum. I didn't go in, but I want to go to that museum. It looks pretty cool. These leg irons they're called hand irons. Hand irons such as these not only secured the prisoner but also restricted their movements from the duration of their imprisonment, which was often years. So can you imagine having these things on you? Dungeon, ankle, menace, and padlock. This stuff was just amazing to look at, to think that this was actually utilized to keep people from being menaces. The Green Mile. I don't know why that. Oh, there it is. There I was in the old timey, whatchamacallit. I don't know what that thing called. My nephew was in it. And here's some infamous pirates. I thought this was pretty cool because you hear some of these pirates in movies, but you just really don't ever know their stories. And I guess if you want to read on these things, you can pause it, zoom in, and read about these individuals. Or you can go to the Crime Museum and check it out yourself. I don't know if it deterred crime or not, but I'm sure if you had that stuff all around your ankles, those people weren't going to commit crimes anymore. I thought this was pretty cool. It was talking about Isaac Parker, Wild Bill Hickok, Bass Reeves, Doc Holliday. Look at that old-timey knife right there. There's a U.S. Marshal badge, which was pretty cool, I thought. Like I said, a lot of this stuff is really interesting. And there's one of the most infamous outlaws there ever was, Billy the Kid. What's it say on the bottom? It says, there was nothing very mannish about him in appearance, for he looked to be a mere boy. He was about 5 feet 8 or 9 inches tall, slightly built, and little, weighing about 140. A frank and open continuance, looking like a schoolboy with the traditional silky fuzz on his upper lip. And he really didn't look like anything menacing. You're right. 5'8", 5'9". And this is the Indian Police badge. It says German silver, 1880 to 1910. This was the first widely issued Indian Police badge beginning in the 1880s. Carved in the back is PEK and December 18th, 1896. Most likely the owner's initials and date of issue. There was no consistency in American Indian badges. In many instances, even policemen on the same reservation would wear different styles of badges. So I thought that was pretty cool. These were really pretty freaking awesome, I thought. Even back then, they were trying to get away with deceiving the police. These were called rustler's shoes. As you can tell, there's a horseshoe at the bottom there. And it says, these 19th century shoes were worn during robbery to fool law enforcement. According to the man who used them, he would wear these shoes and go one way, and his partners on horses with no shoes would go the other way. So officers would be looking for a horse with only two shoes. Isn't that interesting? Carved out of wood with horseshoes and pieces of leather attached to it. And this is a Schofield revolver, Smith & Wesson .44 caliber. Wyatt Earp carried a Schofield such as this at the shootout at the OK Corral on October 26, 1881. For fast reload, the entire frame swings down, revealing all 6 chambers. Isn't that freaking amazing? I saw this gun and I was like, man, that thing is huge. I'm out of practice with this. And this was the bust of Pancho Villa. If you don't know who Pancho Villa is, he was an outlaw in the Texas area. Very menacing individual. And here's another pistol. This one, double action revolver. Can't really read what it says because I got a blurry picture, but look at the length of that barrel. It's pretty cool. And then we had these kind of pictures that we took. And I don't know what kind of picture that was. But there's me and my niece and nephew's adoptive brother, I guess. And we're behind bars. And there is some more pistols. You know, for as much as the gun has changed, it really hasn't changed a lot. I mean, look at the barrels on these things. Get shot with these things, it's a wrap. And later on, as we get through a lot of this, you'll see some ballistics. And this says Jesse James Stories. Jesse James the Outlaw. And as you can see, there's Jesse James. This is Frank James walking stick. I've hunted for 21 years, have literally lived in the saddle, have never known a day of perfect peace. It was a long, anxious, external vigil. And these are Jesse James bloodstained floorboards. These floorboards were taken from the house of George R. Height in Logan County, Kentucky. Height was the uncle of Jesse and Frank James, and his sons often ran with the James gang. Wow. I tell you, a lot of people do not value history anymore. But a lot of this stuff is really, really amazing. It's an old moonshine. Still. I thought it was ingenious how some of these things were even thought of back then. Like, how would you have even thought to make a contraption like this to distill moonshine? And this is another outlaw. And then we get into Ma Parker, Herman Barker, and Lloyd Barker, the famous Barker boys. Arthur Doc Barker, Fred Barker. And like I said, you can go back and pause this and read it and make it bigger, or you can just go to the museum and check it out. Pretty Boy Floyd, Babyface Nelson, Machine Gun Kelly, John Red Hamilton, and Harry Pierpont, Homer Van Meter. And a Thompson submachine gun. That thing was awesome. It looked like something you would see in those old gangster movies. Then you saw some fingerprint down here. John Dillinger said, unfortunately for John Dillinger, the painful surgery did little to change his appearance. To this day, there are many people who question whether it was actually Dillinger who was killed outside the Biograph Theater in Chicago or just a look-alike. And then we get to these little beauties. This pistol was from The Godfather. This model Colt MK3 subnose revolver was carried by James Caan's character Sonny Corleone in the 1972 movie The Godfather. That is awesome. There's another replica. And this was carried by Al Pacino in the movie Scarface. I'll be right back. I'm having some stomach issues this morning. I'll be right back, guys. Sorry about that. Yeah, that was that was the gun from Scarface. And they had some, these are the guns from The Godfather. And what this down here? Capone Japanese cherry trees. And there's the famous man of them all, Al Capone. January 17th, 1899 to January 25th, 1947. When I sell liquor, it's called bootlegging. When my patrons serve it on Lakeshore Drive, it's called hospitality. I mean, you think of some of these people, like Al Capone, and in my mind, I would have never in a million years, I've seen pictures of him, but I would have never in a million years pictured that he looked like that. No, he don't. No, he doesn't. Not even in the slightest. It says, meanwhile, in New York and Chicago, while the rest of the country was struggling to make ends meet after the stock market crash in 1929, there was a category of criminal that experienced little effect on their business and continued to get rich on the shadows of prohibition, operating with minimal fear of the law. The Italian Mafia or Cosa Nostra, our thing, became to America along with the waves of other immigrants in the 19th century. And I have it big enough that you can read it. I don't feel like going through and reading every little thing for you. And this was a Chicago newspaper, which I thought was freaking amazing. Alky gunmen slay 7. Roar of guns, gang and auto, ghastly scene of death described. Isn't that cool looking? How it's been preserved. And I've always been fascinated by this, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, February 14, 1929. And if you don't know anything about that, you might go check it out. But they were trying to kill Al Capone and he wasn't even there. Capone's men set up a trap to lure Moran with it. Oh, my bad. They set up a trap to lure Moran with cheap shipment of beer. After the Northside gang members arrived, Capone's men impersonated police officers, staging a raid. The fake officers disarmed Moran's men, who complied, thinking they were actually really police. They were then lined up against the wall and executed in cold blood. However, the plan had failed. Moran was late and left when he saw the police car out front. So I had that totally mixed up. It wasn't about Al Capone. His men slaughtered Bugsy Moran's men. And this, if you know who John Gotti is, This is John Gotti's infamous suit that he wore multiple times, as you would see him in pictures. He was known as the Teflon Don. And that was one of the guns that was used by John Gotti. And this individual was the interesting one of them all. I think his name is D.B. Cooper. You see him right there exiting an airplane. And here's his story. It says, on November 24th, 1971, I was only like 2 months old. A man going by the alias Dan Cooper, DB, came about by media error, but sounded more mysterious and the name stuck. Left from Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 in midair after hijacking it for a $200,000 ransom, over $1 million in today's money. Cooper first hijacked the plane en route to Portland, claiming he had a bomb. After landing in Seattle, he allowed the passengers to leave in exchange for the money and parachutes. Flight attendants described him as a calm, polite, and even friendly during the 2 hours the plane circled while the ransom money was being collected. So there's a map of where they think the money was, what he supposedly looked like, and this was a picture of him. I'll get a better picture here in a second. This is where they thought the money was found, over here. And this is the route. D.B. Cooper. And I got that the hatch of the airplane. And this is a $20 bill packet bundle that has a die pack in it. The middle has been cut out to accommodate a number 9 red die pack and detonator used to stain money during bank robberies. The stain instantly marks the money as stolen and unusable. The detonator has been removed, but the die pack is intact. I thought that was so cool. I was like, how did they get that die pack to go off? Have y'all ever wondered some of these things that I'm asking these questions about as I'm going through this? And here we're getting to the serial killers. Judy Bonanno, April 4th, 1943 to March 30th, 1998. And I remember putting her as a trivia of the day. Known by several names throughout her life, Judy B. was convicted in the shocking death of her disabled son, Michael, the poisoning of her husband, John Goodyear, and fiancé, John Gentry. She was also suspected in the deaths of 3 other men and was dubbed the Black Widow. So if you've never heard of her, you might go check her out. Yeah, D.B. Cooper, that was an interesting story. This lady was the Black Widow. And when I put her on my community post one day, I had no clue about that case. But reading up on it, I'm thinking, she was the vicious one for sure. And this Afghan was made by her. This blanket was crocheted by Bonanno while on Florida death row and was given to her daughter. You can see her prisoner number attached, which is right there. And this painting right here was done by Otis Toole, Florida State Penitentiary. And there's his number. Isn't that crazy? Otis Toole. If you don't know who that is, you might need to look him up. There it is again. It says, Otis Toole was only 14 years old when he murders his first victim. Though his victim count is unknown, he confessed to over 200 murders with his lifelong companion, serial killer Henry Lee Lucas. In April 1983, he was arrested for burning down a church in his hometown of Jacksonville, Florida. He died in prison from liver disease while serving multiple life sentences. On December 16, 2008, Toole was named the killer of Adam Walsh, the son of crime fighter John Walsh. This chilling ink sketch by Otis Toole, perhaps a self-portrait, is signed along with his prison number and prison address. Wow. And look in the background. I didn't even notice it when I took the picture. That is John Wayne Gacy's picture drawing. I didn't even realize that when I took that picture. Isn't that cool? And then this is Henry Lee Lucas' prison Bible. Henry Lee Lucas was found guilty of murdering his mother in 1960. He was paroled in 1970 and soon after found guilty of the attempted kidnapping of a teenage girl. Lucas was released from prison once more in 1975 and was arrested for the third and final time after murdering two women in 1983. Throughout his final incarceration, Lucas confessed to hundreds of murders, while hard evidence was only found for the three. The Bible seen here belonged to Lucas during his incarceration. His name was written on the spine, and his personal notation can be found on the front page. Wow, isn't that cool? We have such a fascination of these people. And this says Jeffrey Dahmer's handcuffs. These handcuffs were used to move convicted serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer from his housing unit to the visiting room while incarcerated at Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin. Dahmer served his sentence at that facility until he was killed by a fellow inmate in 1994. He only served 2 years of his 16 life sentences. Man, they're still in pristine condition, it looks like. BTK prison letters. Dennis Rader, otherwise known as the BTK Killer, terrorized Wichita, Kansas and the surrounding communities from 1974 to 1991, taking the lives of 10 people from varying demographics. Prior to his apprehension in 2005, he sent 16 written communications to the media, mocking the police and taunting the public. The prison letters seen here were correspondence between Rader and a forensic handwriting analyst. His signature is vastly different from his printed writing. When there's a huge of a difference, I can say comfortably that the public demonstrator was quite different than a real person. On the outside, good old Dr. Jekyll, on the inside, Mr. Hyde. You know, stamps don't cost 37 cents anymore. I don't even know what they're up to, but they're not that cheap. And here's some more prison letters from BTK. Isn't that awesome? What do y'all think so far? They probably will, Leslie. And here's some more. Jeffrey Dahmer, Albert DeSalvo, and Richard Ramirez. I'd heard of DeSalvo, but I never knew what he did. It said between 1962 and January 1964, 13 women were murdered in the Boston. He was the Boston Strangler. That's it. That's why I know him. 1985 were sexually assaulted in their apartment before being strangled with articles of clothing, leading to the nickname the Boston Strangler. DeSalvo was initially suspected, and authorities were not even sure the murders were connected. Can you imagine, like, running into these people? Doesn't he look like a normal person? He doesn't look like he'd be menacing. But like I said, you just never know. You just never know. And of course, we've done stuff on Richard. And I even showed the movie on Discord, The Night Stalker. And of course, I did one on Jeffrey. That's in my library. If you want to go check it out before vacation, I did that. And here's the clown. Here is the clown. John Wayne Gacy. I didn't know a lot of these people were executed in the 90s or died in the 90s. And I think I'll probably redo one of him, even though I did one already. I think I'll go ahead and redo one. He was not a small man by any means, but he was not a tall man. So this next part that I'm about to show you has baffled some people. Is these outfits. They seem to be very thin compared to what people visualize what he wore. I think they would have fit him. I mean, he would have been able to fill him out for sure. And there's that painting, one of the paintings that he did while he was incarcerated. It's just interesting to me how they view themselves. Like, He probably wants to be that nice, caring guy, but underneath there, he likes killing young men, sexually assaulting them. And there's another view of the clown outfit. Now, if you bumped into him, I'm sure you'd probably get that evil vibe. And there we have the Zodiac Killer, David Berkowitz, and Dennis Rader. BTK is another one that I want to do because they're quite interesting. Did I feel uncomfortable? It was a different feel. Like, it was hard to believe that you were actually standing next to these individuals that committed with their clothing, supposedly, or replicas. And it was just so disturbing. I didn't really get freaked out until the Bundy part that I'm going to show you. That freaked me out. And there's the first crime of passion. Do y'all remember that case where the individual was a pizza delivery guy? And I'll get there. There is a little bit of replicas. Remember where he wore the bomb around his neck? And he robbed a bank. And he was telling people that if they tried to remove that, it would kill him. It would blow his head off. Well, here's the contraption. It was around his neck, and it was fastened with a bomb right here. So once this thing was tampered with, it blew up. So this was a pizza bomber. That was an interesting case, too. There he is right there. Brian Douglas in Erie, Pennsylvania. And there's Susan Smith and Lizzie Borden. And I'll leave that up for you to read. I'll be right back. Please don't leave. right. I think I'm going to cut it off right here. I'll do a part 2 later on because I'm having some stomach issues and I don't want to keep getting up and down, up and down, up and down. You know, that road food messes with you. But those of you that were up with me this morning, thank you so much for being here. I will do a part 2 later on, so be looking out for that. And I hope that y'all have a wonderful morning, wonderful evening, or wonderful night. Whatever part of the world you're watching this from. My name is 12 Gauge once again. And this is my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you soon. Maestro, cue that music.